to Discograffiti, the Music Obsessives podcast that gives freaks like you and me the chance to connect with the brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebroe, and with 4 new episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on MOBY Grape's Skip Spence, along with our special guest, MOBY Grape and Skip Spence biographer Cam Cobb. This is part 6 of my discussion with Cam Cobb about the amazing life of Skip Spence, and it's part 12, the very last episode of our Grape Expectations Series. So in the summer of 1981, Skip is living in a residential hotel, and he gave an interview during that time, during which he was quoted as saying, "I'm a derelict, I'm a world savior, I am drugs, I am rock and roll." He was 35 at the time, but he'd been hearing voices for over a decade, and during that time, he had lost his family, his career, and his ability to focus in any given situation. Now I'm quoting the article, not him. "Only the voices, sometimes threatening, sometimes comforting, have stayed. Now on his bad days, when the voices intrude too much, when they threaten torture, Spence checks himself into a psychiatric ward. He's been in the hospital 20, maybe 30 times, he says. Visiting his hotel room, and man, this detail is so sad. The journalist, gazing through all the chaos, probably, crumpled takeout containers and stuff, and notices a little rag doll sitting on top of an empty whiskey bottle, which was a gift from Skip's mother, Gwen, and printed across the doll's chest the words, "My best friend," which is so fucking sad. I mean, just sometimes, in a movie or a book or anything, especially real life, just a tiny little detail like that puts it so over the top that it just it bursts the balloon. And that one, to me, I think I had to stop reading your book for a minute.
It's like when that section that we were talking about before, where Aaron has these memories of his dad, and you have these opposites in Skip's life. You have this absolute chaos, out of control, but then you have this beautiful thing, and he never loses his connection. Even though Skip doesn't have his family with him, he's always thinking about his family and asking about his family. He still sees his sister and his mom. He still thinks about his kids and his ex-wife. And even in all of that chaos, Skip Spence is a human being. He's a dad, a son, a brother, a friend, and he's struggling, and he's losing his struggle at this point. And this piece that I think her name is Jill Wolf or Wolfson, I can't remember. It's a beautiful piece that she wrote that is, it's a human interest story that isn't judging Skip. It's really just painting this picture of what is this man's life like. We know that he isn't going to be able to stay in this place for long, but he's going to go to another place like this one. And this person who's living kind of on the edge of society here, who created these beautiful things, these incredible things.
At this point, he's kind of forgotten, just societally and culturally. After a while, things come around and MOBY Grape are celebrated for the works that they had done. But at this time, we're not quite there yet. And in fact, what's more indicative of that than what was happening in late 82? This is, of course, occurring independent of Skip. But, the next Grape reunion, which we'll just add to what's been said in the other interviews here, because some of the facts in your book help to fill out the detail, which is that Cates was involved. Incredibly, to my mind, this is just the saddest element, is that the guy who ruined, maybe he didn't ruin their lives, but he certainly was the biggest enemy that they faced beside themselves. close to Christmas, Peter headed up to Seattle. He talks in his interview about how he kind of had no choice because, it was either that or do whatever shitty job that he was doing at the time. And he stayed with Don Stevenson's family as the two men started rehearsing new material. The reformed Grape gathered in LA in the new year in 83 and quickly recorded Too Old to Boogie, a new Miller Stevenson number, and then it quickly crumbled. There was a pair of session players that showed up in the studio and a hired drummer started playing on all the remaining tracks, so Miller and Stevenson walked. Peter and Bob Mosley were the only original members left. The planned tour that they were going to have for it fizzled, and the album went into limbo. And, as far as I'm concerned, Too Old to Boogie being the only true Grape song, I don't even like that song. I think that song is honestly terrible. I think there are good songs on it. I don't think that's one of the good ones.
We've talked about some of those songs. On the first side, there's a run of songs.
There's a run of songs that go from good to great.
Yeah, Bob has some strong ones that he wrote around that time.
Yeah, the second side is terrible. The second half of the record is really bad. So let's talk about the next musical thing that Skip was a part of, because this is kind of cool and you can find it. So in Palo Alto on October 15th, 1983, Skip sat in with a group called the Dinosaurs, which if you're a Dinosaur Jr. fan, then you know that they actually had to rename themselves Dinosaur Jr. because of these guys. And honestly, it works out for the best because these guys truly should be the Dinosaurs, because these are like 60s guys who should have this name. And Dinosaur Jr., for whatever reason, fits Dinosaur Jr. better as a name. So it worked out great. But Skip sat in with the Dinosaurs. It was a group that included John Cipollina from Quicksilver, Barry Melton, Peter Albin, Robert Hunter, and Spencer Dryden. And Skip appears on 2 songs, Seventh Seal, and more notably, We Shall Be So Free. Skip was said to have borrowed Robert Hunter, the Grateful Dead lyricist's guitar that night, because by that point, he didn't have any instruments of his own. So if you go on, it's not YouTube, but it's archive.org. It's like one of those websites where they have a ton of Dead stuff, and you could always go up there and find amazing bootlegs. But it's worth it to hear these 2 songs, because Skippy does a really good job. We Shall Be So Free especially.
Yeah, absolutely. All these things, in the book that I write about with trying to figure out like what's myth and what's reality. Sometimes the myths are rooted in reality. So I find this recording, I'm listening to this recording. The first few times I listened to it, I'm like, is that really Skip? And I'm listening to it again. I was like, yes, that's Skip. And so it was just exciting to find something and listen to something that this is Skip Spence recording on a stage in the early 1980s. Like this is the first recording that we have of Skip from the live Grape era, which was all the way back in November of 77. So it's interesting that it exists, but it's also a good song. Like he's very gentle, the way he's singing that song. He could have such a gentle way sometimes when he was singing. And then he's singing about freedom, this guy who lived a life of pursuing things and doing things freely. And so it's really interesting that we have all those things happening together. And also with these people who we knew from his past, Spencer Dryden.
I just love that he's back with John Cipollina.
Yeah, from that September day in 1965. Yeah.
So upon its release, Moby Grape 84 sank without a trace. And the worst thing imaginable, it was barely even noticed when it was released.
It didn't get bad reviews. It didn't get reviews.
No reviews, yeah. So during this whole time, Skip's ex, Pat, and his 4 children were living about 30 miles away all these years in Santa Cruz. Pat had remarried, and Skip's name wasn't allowed to be uttered in the house because he was so jealous. He was jealous of Skip, and he preferred that Pat have a clean break from her past. So the kids are growing up knowing absolutely nothing about their dad. All right, that concludes your free sneak peek into today's Patreon episode. If you want to hear the rest of it, just visit patreon.com/discograffiti and either purchase this podcast by itself for $4, or better yet, subscribe at the major tier and get access to Discograffiti's 4 weekly episodes. That's Friday's free episode, the Sunday Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound episode, which showcases Patreon members and the Elephant Six world, your Monday Thursday bonus episode and your Wednesday early release ad-free super extended director's cut of that Friday's show. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and 6-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not supporting Discograffiti. Become a member so you don't miss a single thing at patreon.com/Discograffiti.